Okay, thank you. I think we can start with the final afternoon on the rules, and today they have three. The rule of Isabella in two forms, and the rule of Pope Urban, which is not by Pope Urban. But I want to show you, if you're looking for my email address, then on every second page, these last three, you can see this text, and this text ends with gpfreeman@tilburguniversity.edu. So then you know where you can reach me. The rules of Isabella and Pope Urban, 1259, 1263. You know, everybody, really everybody that is concerned or is studying on the rules for the Clares in the 13th century stops with Clare. Of course, they mention the rules of Isabella and of Pope Urban, but they tend to forget it or to tell us that they are unimportant. And perhaps I mentioned it before, but I was in at St. Bonaventure talking with Jean-François Gaudin and David Flood about the things I was doing. And then both confessed that they never had studied these rules. And a few years later, I was in Germany, no, in Austria, on a conference with a number of specialists. And one of them was Leonard Lehmann. I suppose you know his name because he has done a lot and he has been teaching in Rome for a long time. And he said, but Gerard Peter, you do not think that I have ever read this rule of Urban, Pope Urban. And then I didn't know how to react because, in fact, I consider it an integral part of the history, so you have to know it, I think. So I'm happy that you have, at least I suppose, in preparing, you have read parts of both rules. It's something to start with. What we are going to do today, I must confess that I am not totally ready with the preparation of today. So parts of it I couldn't fill in as I wanted to do. So perhaps I do not have enough, do not need enough time, but you will see. You will see. First, I give some introduction on Isabella's rule, then the same thing, exactly the same thing for Urban's rule, and then we discuss the 5 aspects of both rules. And then I end with some final thoughts. It's a simple idea today. The rule of Isabella. In 1259, Isabella, the sister of King Louis of France, later Saint Louis, received the approval of a new rule for sisters of a monastery that she had founded in Longchamp. Longchamp is close to Brie and to Paris. It's where later the Bois de Boulogne would be. 5 Franciscan masters worked on this new rule, among them Bonaventure, the Minister General. Isabella's life writes, she was very diligent in the rule that it should be good and sure, and had it approved by brothers minor, who were good people and mature and masters of divinity, such as Brother Bonaventure, Brother William of Melleton, Brother Hughes of Rosny, Brother Geoffrey of Vierzon, and Brother William of Archambault. She had put into the rule what was in the privileges, and what was doubtful or perilous in the rule she eliminated. That's what is her name? Agnes of Harcourt, her successor as the abbess and the writer of the life of Isabella, wrote about her. Now, Schoenfield, who has done more than anybody else alive on knowledge and study of Isabella and her rule and her foundation, he says that she must have been working herself on this rule very actively. Also that these brothers had, how do you say that? And then minor tasks in it, only giving the background. Because I have been studying the rules altogether, I had to have the tendency to doubt that, because Isabella's rule resembles the other paper rules a lot, and especially the rule of innocence, and then, although it's later, Urban's rule. But at other moments, Isabella's rule goes really its own ways. And you can see that here, and I have the quotations in Latin, because then you can see what is exactly the same and what not. And it's the beginning of the Isabella's rule with the beginnings of Ugolino's, Innocentius, and Urban's rules. Now you see black. Black means, black letters, I mean. Black means they are original. They are not in the other rules. You see light blue, and that is the rule of Innocentius. And you see dark blue, that's the rule of Ugolino. And if you take that together on the row with Isabella, then you see there's a lot of black. So a lot of things that that either Isabella or the Franciscan masters added to it. We will see that in more detail on the next slide. If you see Urban's rule, then you see the first part is from Ugolino, then the three vows are from Innocent, and then Etiam subclausura is only in Urban's rule. So you see that proportionally, Isabella's rule has more original words than Urban's rule. I take out the thing that that is original for her. Let any woman joining this order, inspired by the divine breath and following in the footsteps of our Lord Jesus Christ and of his most sacred mother, according to the counsel of evangelical perfection, live always in obedience, chastity, without property, and, like the hidden treasure of a glorious king, remain enclosed her entire life. Indeed, all those women who, after abandoning the vanity of the world, have resolved to take up this form of religious life, will diligently observe the law of this kind of life. You see the light blue, the dark blue, light blue is Innocent, dark blue is Ugolino. And you see here the white, that's original to the rule of Isabella. And you see it's more the spiritual deepening or the theological ideas, whatever way you want to formulate it. Inspired by the Spirit, following the footsteps, that's a quotation from Francis, but mainly from the New Testament. And the hidden treasure of a glorious king is, I think, original. So you see in this small piece of text, different influences brought together in a new text. The model, that's clear, is the rule of Ugolino and Innocent. Here there's space for spiritual reflection. The abbess has an important role in the rule of Isabella in comparison with the other rules. Like in Clare's rule, the abbess curbs the authority of the man, the provincial minister, the visitator, and the procurator. And I must say that the later rules, Clare, Isabella, and Urban, give the abbess a more important part and give the mutual relations more attention than the earlier rules. It has to do, first of all, I think, with the fact that women have a more important part in it, Clare and Isabella, and so that the rules are more written, more from within, not only from without. But Isabella's rule has two redactions, and that's interesting. The second redaction of this rule points out that the first redaction was not good enough. And what Isabella's life writes about that is this. And above all things, she desired that the sisters of her abbey would be called sisters minor. It is the name of the humility of our Lord that she gave as name to her abbey. And I, Citoyenne de Ancourt, asked her, Lady, please tell me, for God's sake, why you have given this name to your abbey. She responded, because I have never heard tell of any person who took it, which surprised me. For it seems to me that they have left out the highest name and the best that they could take. Humility is the best that you can take. We come to that, especially back to that, especially to the name Sisters Minor. But here I also very shortly indicate what is more differently more in the second compared to the first redaction. It's important because of the changes related to the norms for enclosure. I come to that later, and those for the cura. The chaplain who is not a friar disappears. All roles are fulfilled by friars. The Isabella's rule gives the certain closeness to the friars. The expression lesser sisters, sorores minores, has different meanings, dependent on time and author and fashion also, of course. I have 5 points about that. The first one is that Jacques de Vitry, in his letter from Genoa, speaks about sorores minores as the complement of fratres minores. Now, if you follow the discussions about this letter, which is the eldest occurrence of female Franciscans, so to say, then you may know that there's a huge discussion about the question, are they sisters like Clare, or are they from another kind? And I think there are, you cannot say that the majority of scholars favors the one or the other position. They're really quite diverse, quite different. Some say, no, it's Clare's sisters, because they're the sisters of St. Francis, because Nicolas Custer is that the Swiss capacitors, working a lot on Francis and Clare together. They're Clare sisters because they're Francis sisters, because in the beginning, the order was one, men and women. Others say, no. How can you say that? In the beginning, there were the brothers, the friars. And then, if there were religious women, they had their own path, their own ideas. And it was only Cardinal Ugolino who brought them together, who imposed his own ideas, his own rules. And so they came, and later, they came in contact with Clare. So different ideas. If you ask what is my idea, I think I have to say a bit cowardly. I don't know. There are good arguments for the one position and for the other position. Second, in the course of the 13th century, sorores minores became a normal expression for Damianite sisters in testaments and contracts, although it was not often used by churchmen. This I consider as my discovery. I was by going through a lot of sources from the 13th century, I was amazed to see that the name, the term sorores minores, occurs much more often than most people think, and it occurs as quite a normal expression. Nothing. If you look at the second one here, the prevailing modern use is 13th century sisters who avoid enclosure and like to work in hospitals, condemned by Pope and friar alike. That's what people like Nicolas Custer or Maria Pia Albazzoni think. They are another kind. They are not leading a contemplative life. They are not women who want to live enclosed. It's women who want to live as the friars. That's what they think. And I think it's nonsense, because there have been sisters like that. They are not much. But you cannot prove that the term sorores minores has more to do with those sisters who do not like enclosure than with other sisters. On the contrary, if you see sorores minores, it's mostly used for, let me say, normal poor class, even before they were called poor class. Now you go back to the first page. So I said that's not here the second meaning. In the course of the 30th century, it became a normal expression for Demonite sisters. There's in the series Analecta Franciscana, there's a high, thick volumes with Franciscan sources. One is with the documents for the Franciscans in Bologna, and so also for the poor class in Bologna. And if you simply check in that volume the occurrences of sorores minores, you see it's simply the poor class living in Bologna, they're called like that. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, the third point here is important for what other people think. According to a testimony of around 1270, St. Francis disliked this expression for class sisters, because this text confirmed the feelings of friars who wanted to keep the sisters as far away as possible. It was successful. And nowadays it's successful again. So everybody says, everybody in the intellectual world, you see, they didn't want this term sorores minores because they're not kind. I think the sources do not prove that. And then the fifth meaning of the name is it's the official name of Isabella's sisters after the second redaction of her rule. Who lived according to Isabel's rule. The first redaction was composed for Longchamp, nothing more, nothing less. It was written by Franciscan theologians before sisters lived in Longchamp. So another element for the second redaction is that the second redaction was born out of experience. Some things in the rule didn't function as they should be, so they bettered that, they made it better. The second redaction was formulated in such a way that other monasteries could and would join. Troyes in France, and later the English communities, few, and San Silvestro in Rome. It was never a large group. This is in a nutshell the birth of Isabella's rule. On the 18th of October, 1263, Pope Urban IV promulgated a new rule for the Demonites, who were renamed Clarisses, poor class. This was the result, not the new name, but the new rule, was the result of a quarrel between friars and sisters on the Cura. Although the rule was called after the Pope, it was mainly the result of the work of a cardinal, the cardinal protector Giovanni Gaetano Orsini, who was later better known as Pope Nicholas III. The origins of Urban's rule, I continue calling it Urban's rule because everybody calls it like that, go back to the death of Pope Alexander IV on the 25th of May, 1261. He had been protector of the sisters since 1229. It's a very long time, 32 years. For the friars, Johannes Cajetanus Orsini was appointed as cardinal protector. Another cardinal, Stephanus Hungarus, Stephen from Hungary, became the protector of the sisters. This was the first time that the cardinal who had to ask for the brothers' chaplain was not identical with the cardinal who had to appoint them. So the Franciscans had to give friars to the sisters, and the sisters had to ask for these friars. Now, the task of the brothers, giving the brothers, was fulfilled by the cardinal protector, and the task, the question of the sisters, give us some some friars who can say mass, etc., was fulfilled by the cardinal protector of the sisters. And these two had been the same, so it was easy. In his own body, in his own life, on his own office, he had to take care that his relations remained good. But now they were different, and that meant they could start quarreling, and they did. This went wrong. The brothers chaplain who had lived in the monasteries of the Clares left. The sisters wanted them back. The Pope decided the friars had to stay in the office at his sisters until the next general chapter in May 1263, if, on the condition that the monastery in question was exempted and that the sisters signed a contract on the next slide. And the cardinal protector of the sisters had no jurisdiction over the brothers. That was for the cardinal protector of the friars. This was a short riot, and they worked very hard to make something fine, something better out of it. The contract that the sisters had to sign declared that the Order of Friars Minor was under no obligation whatsoever to render services to the abbess and the sisters in question, but that the friars did this in their generosity or as a mere courtesy. De liberalitate sua per mera gratia. To be honest, it irritates me. It irritates me always when I read this, because it fosters dependency. The brothers are happy when the sisters are dependent, and I think that has nothing to do with the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, and nothing with the message of St. Francis and St. Clare. There are traces of contracts from the monasteries of Verona and Perugia, Spoleto, Castelfiorentino, Mantua, Florence, Terni, and San Ginesio between 1262 and 1266. Why do I call them by name? It's because they are a lot. We never know, they are a lot, but they are all Italian. We never know with medieval sources how representative they are, because much is lost, but what is lost, we simply don't know. But here, actually, when there are 2, 4, 6, when there are eight contracts, then it simply means that there must have been much more. So that the majority of the monasteries or something like that signed this kind of contract. That of Florence was signed on the steps of the High Gate. It stays really there. So the detail that shows that the High Gate was really used, and that so people climbed halfway and signed the contract, but the sisters standing upstairs signed the contract and gave it back. Now, I always wonder about the relationship of this De Mera Gratia with Clare's rule, where Clare, at least 10 years earlier, had asked for a friar's chaplain De Gratia as a grace, as a courtesy. I don't know what the relation is, but it's odd, it's remarkable. This new contract made the relations between the sisters and the brothers more relaxed. The cardinal protector of the sisters stepped down. Giovanni Gaetani Orsini became their new cardinal protector in July 1263. Bonaventure instructed the visitates to return to work. Thus, the way was paved for a new rule in which the new relationships were regulated. In short, the cardinal protector is the boss. The sisters are rewarded provided they are meek, and the brothers are gracious. If I put it like that, it sounds sarcastic, but I cannot. I really have been pondering about this for a long time, not only now, but earlier. I think it's really a matter of discrimination. It would take long before the relations between friars and sisters could be arranged on a more permanent basis. That would only happen under Boniface VIII in 1296. So, yeah, okay. This is sure the beginning of living under the second rule, as it's later called. The first rule, and then Clare's rule, and the second rule is Urban's rule. This is what people are thinking. Just one quotation out of many. Clare is highly praised in his rule, but not much of a rule has remained, namely, a life without possessions and close ties with the Friars Minor, the main points of her life. Clare would certainly not have accepted this rule, but she was dead and was being venerated as a great saint. To put it mildly, it seems strange that the order is now officially known as the Order of St. Clare, and that under this banner a rule is prescribed that had little to do with Clare herself. You know, I do not like this kind of statement. It is a moral judgment, not a result of analysis. It does not explain, it condemns. Nobody is getting better in this way. You have so if you say they have no close ties with the Friars Minor, then you shouldn't say that's bad. You should say why is that? And the answer is because the Friars Minor are opposing it, are obstructing it. It's not because they do not vote. Then it sounds different. Okay. The order receives a new name. And I quote some fragments of the prologue of the Urban's Rule, a great variety of names. Sometimes they are known as sisters, then as ladies, generally as nuns, and not infrequently as the poor recluses of the Order of St. Damien. They have various privileges, various rules, and forms of life. And Urban says, now we're going to make it one, under the name of Order of St. Clare. I have been wondering, normally people say Pope Urban invented, so to say, the name Order of St. Clare, Clares. And before that, it didn't occur. That is not true, but you have to look a bit further than is common. There's one occurrence in a book of contracts from Ulm in close to Bavaria. And that talks about the Sisters of St. Clare earlier than this, earlier, let me say in 1245. But I couldn't find back where the man or the woman who wrote it found it, so I do not mention it. The earliest occurrence that I could find was this. It's the Sermon of St. Bonaventure, who says, now, with St. Clare having been canonized, they are called the Sisters of St. Clare. This is important because he doesn't say it's now that Urban has made a new rule. He says now that Clare has been canonized. And it means that the term Sisters of St. Clare is used since her canonization, 1255. I suggest that we now stop for a break, because then we come to the 5 aspects.